One of the biggest reasons business planning doesn't work, it isn't motivation or time or intelligence. It's that most business owners are mixing up three different things: a business plan, a strategy, and an action plan, and calling them the same thing. Now, when those get blurred, planning feels busy and progress stays slow. I see this all the time. Owners will say, we've got a strategy, but what they really mean is we've got a list of goals. Or they'll say they have a business plan, but what they actually have is a to-do list for the next few weeks. None of those are wrong on their own, but when they're confused, the business ends up reactive, and the plan, it just quietly gets ignored. So strategy, it's about choices, not tasks. It's about deciding what you're going to focus on, what you're not going to focus on, and where you're deliberately allocating your energy, time, and resources. Strategy doesn't tell you what to do next Monday. It tells you which direction matters and which doesn't. And without strategy, everything feels important. And when everything feels important, nothing really moves. So a business plan, it sits between strategy and action. It's not just a document. And it's definitely not something you write once and then forget. A useful business plan should translate strategy into clarity, help you think through the trade-offs, and give you a reference point for decisions when things get busy. And look, if your plan doesn't change how you decide things, it's not really doing its job. For a lot of owners, the plan looks logical on paper, but it doesn't survive a normal week. And that's usually a design issue, not an effort issue. An action plan is much narrower, and that's a good thing. It's about what actually changes next. Not everything in the business, not every idea you've got, just the few actions that matter right now. Action plans are time-bound. They're limited in scope and very practical. When owners treat the action plan as the business plan, they burn out. When they ignore action planning entirely, nothing happens. So when strategy, planning, and action aren't clearly separated, strategy turns into vague goals, plans become long documents nobody uses, and action becomes reactive firefighting. And that's when owners start saying things like, look, we talk about this stuff, but nothing ever happens. The problem isn't that the planning doesn't work, it's that the thinking hasn't been structured properly. And look, when these three elements work together clearly and intentionally, planning becomes lighter, not heavier. Decisions get easier and execution becomes more realistic. But it only works if each one is doing its own job. If this distinction feels useful, I'd recommend starting with the business planning that actually gets implemented playlist. It walks you through why planning breaks down in real businesses and what has to change for it to work week to week without adding to complexity. And that's the best place to continue from here.